Death Battle must be on the decline because they're going back to their old standard of just utilizing Goku versus Superman. That's right. We are now on the third matchup between these two where they're seriously going to try and like convince us for a third time that Superman could totally beat Goku, guys. Never mind never mind that Superman's powers are like wildly inconsistent. Never mind that there are lots of people in the DC universe who can beat Superman. Never mind that Goku's constantly getting more powerful in like his still ongoing manga. Never mind any of that. Superman wins because he just does, okay? Like, let's not like actually think about this rationally. Let's not like actually look at these characters and come to a realistic conclusion. Like, let's not just let's just do the same thing over and over and over again, get the same result, and try to gaslight people into thinking that like Superman is so overwhelmingly powerful that like not a single person in all of fiction could beat him, right? It's ridiculous. It is laughable, right? I'm always like been very outspoken against like power level uh wankery. uh I think the word is. And there's no group of people that's worse about it than like Western comic book fans, because I think like Dragon Ball fans are perfectly fine with like acknowledging that like yeah, Goku's not gonna beat Beerus, right? He's not gonna beat Saitama. He's not gonna beat like a lot of these other characters. But like when you look at Superman, it's always just like oh he can do this and this. Like he sneezed once and he blew away a bunch of planets. Like he's OP, man. Haven't you ever read a Silver Age Superman comic? Like, don't you know that time he bench pressed the entire planet for 5 days straight trying to get a workout because he was too strong to do anything else? Like, don't you know that? Like, it's just tiresome, right? Because what comic book fans fail to understand is that like comic books are wildly inconsistent and have no real standards at all, right? They'll just make up whatever they want for a conflict, right? They'll do whatever so that Superman wins or loses a fight, right? They'll do whatever they want. They'll do whatever they can to push the narrative that Superman is the ultimate hero when objectively that he's not that great, okay? Like let's be real. Like there's a reason Superman is like such an unpopular character among like actual people who actually read this stuff, people who actually like follow along with it because like outside of this like take that like he's the ultimate superhero, the OG superhero, which isn't actually true. Like when you look at it from that perspective, like other than that, like what has the character like really done? Like what has he accomplished? Like what is like when you compare it to something like coherent, like the average manga, something like Dragon Ball, that has an overarching plot where Goku like becomes more powerful and defeats stronger and stronger opponents. Like Superman just continues to exist. He continues to fight people, right, over and over and over again. Like it's a stagnant, never-changing world. The mainstream DC universe. Gotta love them. Speaking out against Elseworld stories, by the way, because like Elseworld, I think, are basically the only times where DC will do anything interesting with the characters. Like it's like the mainline DC universe is basically relegated to pretending as if these characters are way stronger than they actually are. Like the Flash is a really good example. Like supposedly he goes around at like, he can process thoughts at like in an attosecond, right? Like it's just like insane terminology thrown around that doesn't really mean anything, right? Like when you get right down to it, like if you put Superman and Goku in an octagon, right? Like Goku's gonna win, right? He has the training, he has the ability, like he has like there's precedent for it. Like Superman at his core is just someone who's designed to always win with like no real thought or concern as to having like uh any real opposition, any real any real characters that can oppose him. Like he's not a character designed for this kind of like death match, right? Whereas Goku is, right? These kind of like one-on-one anime death matches are the kind of thing that like Goku excels at, right? Like he would surpass Superman, right? He would move on to like the stronger DC characters that do exist, right? He is gonna fight Aquaman eventually, right? Like there is like this idea that Superman is this all-powerful thing that can't be beaten is just laughable. Like if the Kryptonians are so great, why did they go extinct? Like it doesn't make any sense, man. Like oh, they called them all back to the planet. Like all of them? Really? Like that doesn't make any sense, bro. like the entire concept of the Kryptonians make no sense. Like they become empowered by the yellow sun. Why? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like why would they evolve to get superpowers if they were exposed to yellow sunlight? Right? That doesn't make any sense because like the planet is not Krypton itself is not uh it has like a red sun or some shit. Like it's a joke, right? The Superman mythos is garbage. It makes no sense. It's some stupid thing that like a couple of parasite writers came up with to try and ape off like classic Greek myths that are way more iconic, way more memorable, have way better messages than anything that any superhero comic has ever come up with, right? You know, like Superman and every like Western superhero he inspired, Batman, Spider-Man, the entire Justice League, like all of them are cancer on the entertainment medium. Like I am tired of hearing about these characters that like, oh, he's strong. So, like does that make him interesting? Does that mean anything? Like, is that something worth talking about? And the answer is no. Right? Like, not, when I think of Goku versus Superman, I don't think of like, ooh, the character powers versus the character battles. Like, I think of which character is more interesting, and I think the answer for virtually everyone is Goku. The only people who would say Superman are the sort of people who don't even know who Goku is. But like the inability of Western comic book fans to accept that like stronger characters exist, that Superman isn't that great of a protagonist, that Western comic books as a concept are kind of dumb and were always just pure propaganda. Like the refusal from this like community to accept that Superman is not an interesting character, it's appalling. It really is. I just don't think that I don't think that the I think that the Western comic book industry needs to understand that like the world has moved on. Like the way DC scales their power levels, like Superman's always just gonna have more and more insane feats, right? Whether or not it makes sense, right? Like it can't be compared to a single ongoing story, right? It's just a bunch of writers making stuff up that people like Death Battle take the best of compilations and shove it into like a feats category, well, ignoring all the obvious weaknesses of the character, the kryptonite thing, all the massive L's he has taken from characters that realistically shouldn't be able to beat him, characters like Bruce Wayne, right? A normal person, right? Characters like the Joker, right? All the L's he's taken over the years, all the times he's lost fights, all the times that like he's failed to do something he set off to do, right? Like this isn't some unstoppable hero, right? Like he's not as strong as you make him out to be. And it's time, it is time that you finally start acknowledging